Se dará inicio inmediatamente al primero de los bloques de este encuentro internacional, Bloque Canadá. Para ello, invitamos a Alexandra Laverdure, asesora comercial de la Embajada de Canadá, quien es la moderadora de este bloque.
Muy buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Alexandra Laverdure, soy la asesora comercial en la Embajada de Canadá y hoy día su moderadora durante el Bloque Canadá. Es un gran honor para nosotros, para Canadá, iniciar el primer bloque del encuentro internacional. En el transcurso de esta mañana tenemos una agenda muy enriquecida con expertos canadienses quienes van a resaltar a través de 3 sesiones la fortaleza minera canadiense moderna cuanto a la sostenibilidad y la competitividad, echando una mirada a nuestra habilidad para innovar y desarrollar nuestra industria minera. Es indispensable para mantenerse en vigencia y sobrevivir en el mercado. La presentación magistral de la CEMI, el Centro de Excelencia para la Innovación Minera, tocará la transformación del sector minero en Canadá, fluyendo en la siguiente sesión de Mining Suppliers Trade Association, la Asociación Canadiense de Exportadores y Proveedores Mineros, que hará hincapié nuestro modelo del clúster y las cadenas de valores, exhibiendo a 3 proveedores de tecnología de punta. Aparte de nuestra expertise técnica, aprovecharemos de mostrar a la competitividad también que es altamente relacionada al buen manejo socioambiental a través de una iniciativa en el Perú del CIRDI, el Instituto Internacional de Canadá de Recursos y Desarrollo, en cuanto a las comunidades y la credibilidad de la gestión de agua. Sin más tardar, invito a la excelentísima embajadora de Canadá, la señora Gwyneth Coutts, dar unas palabras y oficialmente inaugurar el Bloque Canadá.
Muy buenos días a todos y un saludo muy especial a Isabel Arias Vargas, presidente del Encuentro Internacional, y a la embajadora Silvia Alfaro de la Cancillería que nos acompañan. Bienvenidos a todos. Me da mucho gusto hoy darles la bienvenida en el Bloque Canadá del Encuentro Internacional, además de poder inaugurar el Encuentro Internacional que estrena por primera vez hoy en la historia del PERUMIN. Felicitaciones. El leitmotiv de este año del PERUMIN es competitividad y sostenibilidad, que encaja muy bien con nuestro ADN minero en Canadá. Como seguramente es de su conocimiento, Canadá es una de las jurisdicciones más solicitadas por inversionistas mineros en el mundo. Es debido principalmente a nuestra geología y riqueza en los recursos naturales, por supuesto, pero también por nuestra habilidad para innovar y desarrollar la sostenibilidad y la competitividad de nuestras empresas. En un mundo de precios de minerales fluctuantes, ganar eficiencia operativa, prevenir accidentes y reducir costos es un imperativo. Los proveedores de mineras son conscientes y incorporan cada vez más tecnología a sus productos y servicios para aumentar la productividad y eficiencia. Canadá tiene una multitud de ventajas, pero una ventaja competitiva importante son nuestros polos de operadores y proveedores mineros de primer orden, conocido como nuestro clúster minero. Con más de 200 minas, 49 refinerías y fundidores, clústeres mineros han crecido alrededor de las operaciones y han contribuido al desarrollo de una expertise única en Canadá. Los clústeres son áreas de gran actividad comercial constituidas de una masa crítica de pymes, universidades, institutos técnicos y centros de investigaciones. Los clústeres impulsan la economía y actúan como motores de crecimiento. Superclústeres aprovechan y se desarrollan sobre un clúster. De manera similar a un clúster, Un supercluster es un hervidero con conexiones más establecidas, con ventajas competitivas a largo plazo, con reconocimiento mundial, además de tener un impacto positivo en la creación de trabajo y crecimiento económico. En otras palabras, es un consorcio formado dentro de la industria. A partir de este año, Canadá, a través de nuestra iniciativa Innovación Superclusters, invertirá hasta $950 millones en el transcurso de los próximos 5 años para apoyar a la innovación generada por empresarios estratégicamente asociados con el mayor potencial para construir ecosistemas innovadores. Así aseguramos el futuro de Canadá como líder de innovación y aceleramos nuestro potencial económico. La tecnología de punto está revolucionando y transformando el proceso minero de cada fase y es un gran aporte al éxito del sector minero en Canadá a través de todas las etapas. La tecnología permite buscar fuentes alternativas cuanto a la transformación de procesos, mejora de la funcionalidad de los productos y los sistemas que los soporten y mejora del servicio a los clientes. El uso de la tecnología en minería se enfoca mayormente en la productividad, reducción de costos, seguridad del personal y cumplimiento ambiental. Según Víctor Gómez, en el marco de la segunda conferencia Excelencia Estratégica en la Minería, la digitalización cada vez más toma un rol más fundamental para la industria, aportando en materia de productividad, eficiencia y seguridad. La tecnología de información no solo puede ser utilizada para obtener datos para las compañías, sino para transmitir de mejor manera hacia la sociedad y aportar en transparencia. De acuerdo con la Asociación de Industriales de Antofagasta, durante Exponer Chile 2017, las innovaciones que han liderado la entrega de tecnología de punta últimamente provienen principalmente de países como Canadá y el Perú. Los recursos naturales y la energía son pilares claves en la economía canadiense, representando aproximadamente 20% de nuestro PIB y 1.8 millón de empleos. Sin embargo, los temas ambientales, tales como la contaminación y el acceso o la competencia por los recursos naturales, pueden precipitar conflictos sociales. Minas subterráneas y atajo abierto crean muchos residuos. Esos residuos son un riesgo ambiental y demandan una suma importante de capital para manejarlos. Por esta razón, reducir los impactos y reformar las prácticas son críticas durante la extracción y el procesamiento. También la minería usa agua en las exploraciones, en la extracción de minerales, en las plantas concentradoras, en la lixiviación, en las fundiciones y refinerías, como medio de transporte, en los campamentos y la lista continua. Es un insumo estratégico para el sector. Entonces, el manejo del agua sostenible es imprescindible para el éxito de la industria y su crecimiento continuo requiere un claro enfoque y compromiso con el medio ambiente y la protección de la salud pública. Es por eso que en Canadá nuestro compromiso es desarrollar tecnologías limpias, mecanismos y conocimientos hacia una minería sostenible y remediación con el fin de reducir los impactos. El desarrollo sostenible y duradero es vital, por un lado para garantizar el manejo responsable y la buena administración del campo, pero también por otro lado mantener la innovación en el horizonte y nuestra ventaja competitiva al nivel mundial. Bueno, como líder minero, Nuestra industria se compromete a elaborar minas seguras, sostenibles y productivas, tanto en Canadá como en el extranjero, y en particular en el Perú. Con estas palabras, inauguro el bloque canadiense. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, embajadora Kutz. Ahora me da mucho gusto presentarles a nuestro primer expositor de la conferencia magistral, al señor Douglas Morrison. El señor Morrison es presidente y CEO del Centro de Excelencia para la Innovación Minera. Cuenta con 14 años de operaciones en las minas profundas de níquel en Sudbury, seguido con 16 años como consultor de Golder Associates, viendo diseño, productividad y seguridad de minas. Ha vivido en Australia y Brasil, visitado Chile, África del Sur y nuestro querido Perú. Desde 2012 actúa como presidente y CEO del CEMI y ahora invito al señor Morrison a comentarnos sobre la transformación de la industria minera y la necesidad de una alternativa innovadora que restablezca la confianza no solamente del público, pero también de los inversionistas. Por favor, señor Morrison.
Buenos días a todos. Tengo un pasaporte canadiense, pero actualmente soy escocés. Y tengo que hablar inglés u otras lenguas extranjeras con un sotaque escocés muy fuerte. So I hope your translators will be able to follow everything I have to say. I'm afraid we don't have the material. There we go. Transforming. We have the signals on the in the front, please, on the television. So transforming the metal mining industry, creating value through innovation. So I'll first of all tell you exactly where we're located. Here is Sudbury, here is Toronto. Many of you will already have visited Toronto. Sudbury is here. For many people in Toronto, the 4-hour drive from Sudbury to Toronto is the same distance to the moon. So most people from Toronto don't visit Sudbury very often. But in actual fact, it's a very important place. And we also have very many other mines in the north that we use for collaboration to develop new technologies. Our vision statement is to help mines solve their challenges and to reduce the cost and risk of innovation. And our mission statement is really quite focused. For example, I'll only use one example. Our target for exploration is to find more ore. SEMI does not investigate exploration technologies. We look for technologies, any technology in any sector of the economy that will help us to find more ore, or to find higher quality ore, or to find ore more quickly. That is our target. It's not an exploration, a study program. So here are our 5 themes. 4 technical themes: find, mine is exploration, increase the discovery rate at lower cost. Deep mining, all of the mines in Northern Ontario are now at the depth of 2.5 kilometers. Rock temperature is at least 60 degrees centigrade. So cooling these mines is very, very critical to us. It is the largest single factor in our energy consumption, is ventilation and cooling for these mines, a critical factor. Value mine is simply productivity as measured by numbers in net present value and return on investment. Our mines are already very safe. In Canada, the only safer sector of the economy in Canada is education. As an employee in the mining industry, you are actually safer in mining than you are as an employee in a hospital, for example. So we are a very safe organization. The safest mines of all are closed. Mines close because they're not sufficiently productive to provide a return on investment. We do not close mines because of accidents. We do not close mines because of problems with tailings dams. We close mines because they're no longer economically viable. That is our objective, to make mines more economically viable. To go back, also we have sustainability and environmental issues, and they are important also for the economics. And finally, business mine. The BizMine theme is actually to take all of the technical results that we have here and to turn them into commercially viable, usable products and services. If the mining industry cannot buy or lease or hire expertise, new expertise, the industry cannot adopt new technology. It does not adopt research, it adopts commercially viable solutions. That is the difference between innovation and research. So we live in this innovation niche, and we use these technology readiness levels to explain where we position ourselves. We no longer engage in any research activity at all. We engage all of our activities here in demonstration, implementation, and commercialization, taking products through to the marketplace. Essentially, innovation means new business. If you do not have a commercially viable solution, no innovation actually takes place, ever. That's the difference between innovation and research. Research is new knowledge, not new business. If you cannot convert new knowledge into a commercially viable solution, there is no innovation. Not all innovations come from research. And our best results so far have actually come from old technology. Either 100 years old or 60 years old technology are our best practical solutions going back in time. When I started in the mining industry 32 years ago, we were still using pneumatic handheld drills. And I used this equipment in my first year as a trainee. We have lost a lot of the lessons that we had learned with this older technology, and it's not always important to look at the new things. We should also go back in time and look at some of the old things that we used to do very, very well. So innovation means commercialization, research and demonstration and implementation. Obviously, our slide system is a little bit different here, so things don't line up as I had them. The biggest, most important point here, however, is our change factor is double or triple. We're not interested in changing things by 5% or 10% or 20% or 50%. We have to have a significant improvement, doubling or tripling the performance of an activity, or reducing the cost by half or but to 1/3. This is our target. It's not always achievable, but it is our target. The best you can ever achieve in any enterprise is whatever you set as the target. If we set 20% as our target, 20% is the best we will do. We aim for double or triple. That is our target. So these are our 5 themes, aiming for a step change innovation. Our largest internal program is the Ultra Deep Mining Network. Ultra deep means below 2.5 kilometers. All of our mines are now mining at this depth, and the future for all of those mines is to go deeper. The problems, especially with heat, become very, very severe at 2.5 kilometers. And so we have to make major changes in the way we operate our mines to be successful. That program is a $35 million program. It focuses on deep mine and value mine productivity issues. It has 4 themes: rock stress risk reduction, because we always have geotechnical issues, especially seismic activity in our mines. Energy is the largest single consumer of money in our operations. Material transport and productivity, that is the core of what we do. We move rock and ore in very large tonnages. Most of the mines in Ontario are very small, 5,000 tons per day. When you move to 50,000 tons a day or 100,000 tons a day, the problems are not easier. Small underground mines are also very, very difficult places to operate. So scale, our solutions have to have scale, but problems are problems. And finally, human health and effectiveness. I do not believe it is possible or even desirable to have no people working underground. I don't believe that's ever going to be possible. What we have to do is to make sure that the activities that people engage in underground are the most effective as possible, not the way we do it now. We waste a lot of time in our underground operations. And for all the things that we do poorly in mining, one of them is wasting time. It is the only commodity that we can never, ever replace. We can waste money, we can waste investment, and we can get more investment. If we waste time, we never recover time. So time is one of the most important factors, and I think it's one of the factors we have forgotten in our mining activities. So here we are, our business selection process, criteria. This is the way we do things today, a certain amount of investment, then a return on the investment, and the different picture tomorrow. We focus entirely on three things: decreasing the total capital investment in the beginning. Second, so this goes from here to this point, half. Then accelerate the time to first revenue. It's very important to get to the ore body as soon as possible and to start production, start generating revenue as soon as possible. And finally, improve the return on investment. The inclination of the line indicates the return on investment. So we steepen the line to get better return on investment. All of those three things together give us the net present value of any one project. Some of our problems in Canada are that many of our new projects cannot achieve an attractive net present value, and so they do not attract investment to the project. So those projects will not go forward unless we make a change to one of these three factors, preferably all three factors. This is not just my opinion. We've taken the opinion from people like Peter Bryant at Clario and Mark Cutifani at Anglo American to look at the headwinds in the industry: decline in productivity, 10 to 12% per year. Operating cost increase, 10 to 15% per year. CapEx overruns 20 to 40% are commonplace for new projects. And there is about $25 to $30 billion worth of projects that are delayed because of social and environmental issues. We have to address these issues directly. So, SEMI's targeted approach is to say, if we have a decline in productivity, we have to find a way to increase the flow of ore at a lower cost. It sounds simplistic, but it's not actually easy to do. If it was easy, it would already be done. But it's not easy. If we have an operating cost increase, you have to look at your largest costs. The largest costs in any operation are labor and energy. If we have projects that are not focused on reducing labor cost and reducing energy cost, we will not significantly impact the cost of operations. That is our target. Reducing labor in mining operations does not mean reducing labor entirely. 30 years ago, 20% of all employees in the mining industry were in the service sector. Today, in Canada, 75% of all jobs in the mining industry are in the service sector. Only 25% are directly inside the mines. This transition from the mining companies to the service sector will continue. And we expect the number of employees in the mining industry to increase overall, while the number of employees inside mining operations decreases. CapEx overruns, 20 to 40%. There are lots of operational reasons why this would happen, and a small organization like ours cannot do anything about those. But we can contribute to reducing the upfront capital demand in the first place. That's our target. And finally, improve environmental performance. We're all familiar with the tailings dam failure last year in Brazil, and in that case, BHP Billiton and Australia lost a very large segment of its share price because of the fatalities, etc. Environmental problems are also financial problems. The longer we delay permits and social license to operate, the projects become less valuable, just through a simple DCF calculation. So here we are. We'll focus on the mine ones for now, and we'll focus in particular on reducing production cost. In underground mines, we have to drive a new access ramp from the bottom of the shaft to the new ore body, and if we can do that 1 year faster, for a very small deposit in Sudbury would be $3 billion, 7 years life, 15% discount rate. If we can move that 1 year sooner into production, we increase the net present value by $65 million. And even if we can't achieve it for the whole year, if we achieve it for one single day, it's $180,000 every single day we go into production 1 day sooner. $180,000 every day is what we lose by going slowly. That's what's happening to us. And if we spent $5 million to invest in technology to make this possible, the payback period for that 1 year, for that one project, is 28 days, payback period, for the investment of the technology. The money SEMI has invested in this project is actually only $2 million, so that's about 10 days payback period. I think that's a pretty good return. So here's why: reducing the pre-production capital costs, reversing the decline in drill and blast advance rates for tunnels to access new ore bodies. Now, what's happened since 1965, we've had a dramatic decline, 23 meters per day, and today in Canada is less than 3 meters per day. That's our advance rate. Now, here there are lots of activities, work practices that are no longer acceptable from a safety point of view, and we can never go back there. But we need to do better than 3 meters per day, because 3 meters per day kills mining projects in deep underground operations. We know why it happened. It happened because we have a greater need for safety, more ground control, and larger tunnels and larger equipment. So we understand why that happened. The problem is this, however, that this decline in performance happened when we have the biggest, most powerful, most efficient, most sophisticated mining equipment in the history of the world. This is the change that's taken place, and it's taken place because, I believe, we have focused on the efficiency of the equipment and not the effectiveness of the system as a whole. I'm not concerned of how efficient an individual truck or scoop is. I'm interested in the effectiveness of extracting ore from the mine as a system. And not necessarily the most efficient units will make an effective system. So, here's our conventional approach. We remove the broken rock, put in the ground support, drill the face, charge the face with explosives, and blast. We cannot compress those activities into smaller periods of time to gain a shorter cycle time. So what we decided to do was to develop a canopy so we can now do the drilling and loading at the face at the same time as we installed the ground support with all of this equipment and all the operators protected underneath the canopy. That was stage one. And stage two was to change the length of time it takes us to remove the broken rock from the heading. This is basically a discrete element simulation of the whole process of a drift heading. You can see here the largest single time period is for bolting in the heading. And if we change the critical path reductions, this dramatically loses 4.8 hours of bolting time, eliminated not from time, eliminated from the critical path in the operation. If we also then include some continuous improvement, continuous loading equipment inside the heading also, we remove another 1.8 hours. In total, we've now saved 6.6 hours from the cycle time. Our cycle time in Canada is 16 hours. In fact, it's even more than that because we can't make good use of the other 8 hours in the cycle. So 16 hours is the cycle time, and by eliminating 6.6 hours from that cycle, the cycle time becomes 10 hours, and we can repeat 2 blast headings per day every 24 hours. That is double the performance of our current activities. Doing it twice a day rather than once a day or once every 1.5 days, which is our current practice. What we did was we developed a canopy. I'll show you a bigger picture of this just now. This is exactly the effect that it has on basically a development cycle. If we have 3 meters a day, and if that's our standard, and we now use a canopy and go to 8.5 meters per day, we save 217 days for every kilometer of ramp we drive. For every kilometer we save 217 days. 217 times 180,000 dollars per day is $40 million. You add $40 million per kilometer of drive if you go faster. And for a 3-kilometer drive, that means we gain 22 months, almost 2 years faster to the ore body, and we've added $120 million to the net present value of the project. This is the system that we looked at. Basically, it is a combination of 3 canopies, 1 back canopy here for bolting, and meshing in the tunnel, one for traveling, and here's the canopy at the front for drilling and charging. In Canada, in Sudbury, we have seismic events, rock burst events coming from the face of our tunnels, and so we also have to bolt and mesh the face today. That's one of the reasons we're so slow. If we have this protection here and the face protection, also we don't need to bolt and mesh while we're active at the heading. This is not equipment that's completely different from the other equipment that we use. No matter what the bolting system you use, it will be exactly the same. The jumbos will be exactly the same. The charging of the explosives will be exactly the same. Nothing else has changed. We've just made the cycle a different cycle by making it possible to do concurrent activities at the same time. Physical barrier to all the hazards and concurrent activities that reduces the phase cycle, that's the bolting and the charging and the drilling, to less than 8 hours. The next phase, of course, and what this does for us is reduce our 16-hour cycle to 10.5 hours, and now we can do that twice. The last thing it does is, the one thing we have to be able to do in this setting is before we begin the phase cycle, we have to reduce the muck cycle to remove the rock in less than 2 hours. That means moving 300 tons an hour, because we also have to move the canopies in and out. The canopies shrink laterally and vertically, so every canopy can move through the larger canopy, because we have to install the back canopy first. The second canopy goes through in its smaller shape, is repositioned in front and expands laterally, expands vertically. Then the first canopy, the front canopy, moves through both of those canopies to the front, is expanded laterally, expanded vertically, and now all the face equipment can go back into the heading underneath the protection of the canopy and do concurrent activities. That is the only way to compress the cycle time. So, let's move on to operating cost increase, labor and energy. We have spent the last 4 or 5 years working with 2 companies in Sudbury, one called Bestec on ventilation on demand, that is directing ventilation to production areas and away from underutilized areas. Also, Maestro is ventilation sensors to improve the performance of our monitoring equipment in the mines. 4 years ago, when we started the ultra-deep mining network, we could find no company interested in battery technology. 4 years later, battery technology is now very, very popular. And there are lots of projects that want to do that. But we tried to get this started 4 years ago. We lost 4 years. But the most important thing is introduce cooling. If you're in a hot place, it's really valuable to make it cooler. And that means bringing in other forms of energy to make it cooler. And we went back 100 years to this technology called a hydraulic air compressor. It was built in Ontario in the far north in the year 1910. So this is the first time we have built a hydraulic air compressor in Canada in over 100 years. And it will produce fresh compressed air. The demonstration model that's active today is 3 atmospheres of pressure. The original one was 9 atmospheres of pressure for compressed air. If we take fresh compressed air to dead-end headings, which is the hottest part of any mining operation, and release the compressed air, we get cooling and dehumidification. And all of that air moves through the whole system without the fans, because the expansion of the air from 3 atmosphere to 1 atmosphere means the volume changes by 3-fold, and none of that air has to be moved by the fans. So we don't need fans for that part of the ventilation circuit. It's over 100 years old, and it works very, very well. We also think there's a place for liquid air systems, and liquid air systems are atmospheres at 60 atmospheres. And so there's an economy of scale that you gain by having higher pressures of air. We also moved to PPE. It turns out, scientifically, the clothes that we wear in our underground mines are the worst type of clothes we could possibly be wearing in hot, humid conditions. So we engaged with one of the colleges in Ontario to design new fabrics that will breathe and release heat much more effectively. And we have several options for this. But the more initial target was actually this one, which was Janitech working on both these problems, but on the individual proximity warning for people in the mine. All the electronics are built into a standard helmet. The attachment clicks onto any helmet, and gives the individuals in the mine the warning of proximity of large equipment. Now, again, 3 years ago, nobody was particularly interested in that warning for individuals because the drivers of the equipment are warned about the proximity of individuals. But here's the problem. If we make the transition to battery-driven equipment, we have a whole generation of underground operators who are attuned to listening for large diesel engines coming by. And you don't need much warning of a large diesel engine coming by. But you do if you're working in a dark, confined space and the equipment is now run by battery. Because these are quiet and everybody underground wears earplugs and earmuffs. They will never hear this equipment approaching. So they need a warning signal to let them know that the equipment is actually becoming dangerously close to where they are. So 3 years ago, we could get nobody interested in this technology. It is about to become highly commercially available everywhere. And finally, so that's the last point. You need to have a warning for battery-driven equipment in dark, confined spaces. I actually don't think the batteries are the final solution for us, but we'll come back to that. And here we are. Decline in productivity, 10 to 12% per year. Increase the ore flow rate. How should we do this? Well, here's the problem with the LHD, the load haul dump machine. The load haul dump machine weighs 3 times more than the load that it carries. And it returns empty. So for every ton of material that we move 6 tons of machine. That means that 80% of the fuel that we burn for these vehicles is to move the vehicle, and 20% is to move the ore. And our ventilation systems are regulated on brake horsepower. So the number of brake horsepower we have underground controls the amount of ventilation we have. It's not the cost of the diesel for the engine, it's the cost of the ventilation, which is tens of millions of dollars a year for ventilation, because it's tied to the brake horsepower of the equipment. 80% of that demand is just to move the machine. For deep underground mining operations, we have to decide if we are in the machine moving business or in the ore moving business. And I think we need to be in the ore moving business and eliminate the transportation of equipment in the underground operations. Time effectiveness, load, haul, dump. That's what the machine is called, but the haul time is very, very much longer than the loading time and the dumping time. The problem here is looking at the efficiency of the LHD as an LHD. That is not the point. The object of the exercise is to move the pile of ore. 90%, if not 95% of the time, no piece of equipment is touching the pile of ore. It may well be that the scoop tram is efficient, but it is not effective at moving the pile of rock because more than 90% of the time, the pile of rock remains untouched. That means time efficiency means it's less than 10% efficient, perhaps even 5% efficient. If you combine fuel efficiency with time efficiency, the overall system is 2% effective. It's effectiveness of the task, not the efficiency of the equipment, the effectiveness of the system rather than the efficiency of the machines. That's what we need to focus on if we are to have any chance of mining successfully below 2.5 kilometers. Yes, automation of equipment is important, and it's necessary, and it's going forward all the time. Electrification of equipment is essential, and it's urgent. In actual fact, the first all-electric mine was built more than 35 years ago at Crean Hill, just outside of Sudbury. But all the equipment used umbilicals, umbilical cables to provide electricity to the production units. The operators did not like umbilicals. I don't like umbilicals, but they're very cost effective. The problem with batteries is that batteries are heavier than diesel. If you start to use electric engines with batteries, the total mass of the equipment increases while the mass of the ore remains the same. So the percentage of your energy spend on equipment increases, and the percentage of money you're spending on ore will decrease. Supplying direct power to equipment eliminates both diesel and batteries. and it's much more cost effective. So our target in SEMI then is continuous ore transfer, energy and time efficient systems, and once we have those systems designed, then move on to electrification and automation. That's not worked out well at all, and neither has this. What it basically says is, if we can move 300 tons an hour out of a single heading, we can do that in a draw point at 250 to 300 tons per hour. If we move 250 tons an hour from a draw point, that means in our open stoping settings in Canada, 5,000 tons per day, we only need 2 or at the maximum 3 draw points to produce all of our ore from 2 stopes, rather than 4 or 5 or 6 stopes. And for a block cave, it says with that extraction ratio of 250 to 300 tons per hour, we can move 120,000 tons per day from 10 or 12 extraction drives. That's an important advance. So here we are. That's our primary program in the underground mines. We also have sustainability. I don't have time today to talk about the fine mine exploration work that we've done, but we'll focus then on this problem here, improving our environmental performance. Every single year, somewhere in the world, there is a tailings dam failure. And while that tailings dam failure is a crisis for the individual company, it is actually damaging to the entire industry in terms of credibility. What it tells the public is that the industry cannot actually manage one of the fundamental problems that we have, which is tailings dam stability. Here we come back to this picture again. Same thing, decrease the investment, accelerate time to revenue, improve ROI, and we only think the only way to do this is with step change innovation with a target of 200 or 300%. Here's why it's important for tailings and waste management. It comes back to time. The delay in getting a mine permit because we refuse to change our practices for waste management means projects are delayed. Time is money, and money is time. It's exactly the same thing. If we choose not to improve our environmental waste management practices, we will lose more and more time to social investigations into our projects, and they will be delayed more and more. Many people believe that over the next 30 years, the industry will evolve. I don't believe that we have 30 years to wait. I think these transitions must begin in the next 5 to 10 years. We believe at SEMI in the next 5 years, we will have all the technologies that we need to begin the transition, and very quickly after that, the transitions will begin to happen, because as soon as one mine becomes more cost effective than the others, all the others have to follow suit. They have to follow on. Here's our proposal, is to eliminate subaqueous deposition of tailings. All of the risk to do with tailings dam failures like this, like Los Frailes in Spain in 1998, is to do with the water behind the dam. If there is no water stored behind the dam, the risk is dramatically less. In arid countries like Peru, Chile, Australia, Southern Africa, it's clear if we recover the tailings water for the processing plants, our use of water is dramatically less. In Canada, we believe that we do not have a water problem, and so we don't have to make changes. This is not true. We have a water problem just like everybody else. It is just more difficult to see because we do not have arid conditions in most parts of the country. But here we are. We can go to dry stacking. The problem is with the physical covers and organic covers, and it's very difficult to see how that would work. What we think is going to be successful is separation and sequestration, essentially taking the primary tailings coming out of the plant and separating it into a secondary concentrate and a secondary tail. 80% of the total volume of the tailings coming out of a processing plant are benign. They don't really require very much processing at all. We can easily go to bioremediation, monitoring permanent vegetation, full and final closure of that 80%, because it has very, very little or no toxins within it. All the toxins can be contained and sequestrated in the 20%. That means we can focus all of our attention for industrial processes on the 20%. Our problem right now is we distribute all the toxins and all the reagents through the entire mass of the entire tailings pond. And that means we have to deal with 100% of the volume. I think we need to change that so we divide out the problem materials from the non-problem materials, which are 80%. And we can show the public that 80% of the material we produce will be returned to the original state or to alternative land uses very, very easily and quickly. The secondary concentrate will then go to contaminant treatment and storage, and also there's some additional value inside the tail that we did not look for in the past. And we have in blue, you can see the names of all the organizations and companies that we're working with on all of those activities. This is the mining innovation imperative. The same graph again. I'm not going to bore you with it the second time. This is a little bit different again, because here we are. People will say, so we think if we don't make improvements to our net present value, if our mining operations include in the future increasing the depth, increasing the heat, increasing the costs, if this is the future for your mining operation, your net present value is actually being eroded. It's declining every single day. If you stick with the same process, use exactly the same process as underground, and you're getting deeper and hotter and more expensive, your return on investment is declining every single day with no change in the process. So people will say innovation, especially step change innovation, is a risk, and it is a risk. But that's only true if the baseline is zero risk. Our business is not a zero risk business. Doing the same activity all the time does not mean we have zero risk. Doing the same thing all the time means, in fact, that we have an erosion of the return on investment. So when we look for more capital to go even deeper, we cannot provide a better return than the level above. We have to improve our processes all the time in order to continue to offer at least as good a return on investment as now in the future. So in actual fact, the real truth is, with no innovation, you're declining the net present value and the return on investment of our operations. So for me, innovation is not a risk. Innovation is absolutely essential if we are to have a continuing industry in the future. In Canada, in fact, the Mining Association of Canada has a political review every year to consider the opinion of the population about the mining industry. It's always very high. This year, for the first time, the same analysis was done looking at the age of the people who responded to the survey. And what they found was the high opinion of the Canadian population is dominated by the older generation. In Canada, we call them Zoomers, people of my age, plus or minus 10 years or so. The difference is in the opinion of the millennials, people who are 35 and younger. And their opinion is significantly different from the older population. In the next 5 years in Canada, as we see the transition of that opinion being dominated more and more by millennials and less by Zoomers, the opinion of the Canadian public will shift towards a much more demanding response on environmental and social issues. That's what we're facing in Canada, and I'm quite sure it will be true in every country in the world in the very near future. That is why I don't think we have 30 years as an industry to make the changes at a pace with which we are comfortable. We will have to become comfortable with a pace of change that is uncomfortable. That is our future. That's certainly the future for Canadian mines, and we think it's the future for all mines. So that's our list. I'm happy to talk about that later. I can't see the time here, so I'm going to stop now. And if the people at the back tell me I have time, we'll answer some questions. If not, muchas gracias por su atención.
Gracias al señor Morrison por una presentación realmente muy provocativa que encaje muy bien con nuestro siguiente expositor. Como recalcó el señor Morrison, la transformación es en gran parte posible a través de una estrecha correlación constante entre la innovación, la excelencia y la comercialización del sector privado, es decir, una colaboración dentro de un clúster minero. Asimismo, la academia, el Estado y los especialistas, tales como las incubadoras y las aceleradoras, son vitales para este proceso. Enseguida, invito al señor Ryan McEachern, quien es el director ejecutivo de la Asociación de Exportadores y Proveedores Mineros, MSTA, o sea, la voz nacional en Canadá para el sector minero, para los suministros y servicios mineros, con aproximadamente 3.700 empresas. Señor McEachern es un geólogo que tiene más de 20 años trabajando en el sector minero, con mineras internacionales, banca de inversiones, la manufactura y servicios de perforación. El señor McEachern nos ilustrará el valor agregado de los proveedores mineros como instrumento para la creación de soluciones innovadoras para mejorar la forma en que se explotan las minas, seguido de un panel constituido por Cipher Environmental, Motion Metrics y McLean Engineering, que tocará la excelencia del manejo ambiental, la productividad y seguridad y el uso de energía eléctrica en vez de diésel, respectivamente. La práctica de innovación no debe estar centrada solo en los costos, sino se debe estar incluida en toda la cadena de valor de las empresas. Por favor, señor McEachern y los tres panelistas, pasen al.
Well, good morning. I want to thank everyone for attending our event this morning. I especially want to thank our Trade Commissioner, Alexandra Laverdure, for inviting me to speak today about Canada's mining cluster and how our ecosystem works together to create an environment that produces a world-class competitive value chain. I also want to apologize that I will be speaking English, as my Spanish would be too painful to understand. So. Do we have the slides? Perfecto. Okay. I would like to take a moment to introduce myself and our organization. My name is Ryan McEachern, as Alex had introduced me. I'm the managing director of our newly renamed organization, Mining Suppliers Trade Association of Canada, which is formerly CAMISI. For over 35 years, we have assisted Canadian mining suppliers, connecting them to opportunities to grow their businesses around the world. Our members are located across Canada and are comprised mostly of small to medium-sized enterprises that provide products and services spanning the whole mining life cycle, from early-stage exploration, development, design and construction, operations, refining, reclamation, and closure. Historically, the mining industry in Canada has played a key role in developing our nation, and we continue to be a major economic contributor to our country in terms of exports and creating jobs that provide above-average incomes. In terms of employment, the Canadian mining ecosystem provides over 590,000 jobs in urban and remote regions in our country, and our country is also the largest private sector employer of Indigenous people, totaling approximately 11,000 jobs. Canada's Toronto Stock Exchange also remains a major destination for global mining and exploration financing activity, with almost 50% of mining industry equity capital raised in the world, with foreign direct investment in over 100 countries. Playing a big role in the Canadian mining ecosystem are more than 3,700 Canadian mining supply and services companies located across Canada. You may have noticed that I have referred to Canadian mining industry as an ecosystem. Rather than a cluster. And this is due to the geographic size of and mineral diversity of our country. We are really made up of several distinct, globally recognized mining clusters, such as the Sudbury Mining Cluster. Each cluster is comprised of a dense and critical mass of resource companies, innovative small to medium-sized companies, post-secondary institutions, industry associations like ours, and incubators and accelerators. In addition, our provincial and federal governments support these clusters with several funding programs and tax incentives that foster the research and development, innovation, and commercialization of new products and services. These are all key ingredients for any cluster to be successful and sustainable, and it's why it works in Canada. Each of the Canadian mining clusters contain unique strengths while sharing significant overlap with other clusters. For example, the Greater Toronto Area Cluster has developed a critical mass for expertise in mining finance and other professional services related to mining, such as accounting, legal, engineering, and environmental consulting, as well as water and energy technology development. The Sudbury Cluster, which you heard about, which is one of the most well-known mining clusters, has a deep-rooted history in mining operations and has a well-integrated mining innovation ecosystem with globally recognized expertise across all life of mine disciplines. Vancouver has developed into a primary global hub for mineral exploration and has a dynamic ecosystem of organizations providing pioneering advances in next-generation mining. The Quebec City Cluster has developed globally recognized expertise in mineral processing, advanced sensing, and engineering services. Saskatoon has recognized expertise related to water treatment, environmental remediation, and engineering services, and has developed unique, globally leading programs for Indigenous-focused training. Edmonton is a service and supply hub for oil sands development in northern Alberta. These mining clusters operate in a highly regulated and competitive business environment, and as a result, have developed a strong and reliable ecosystem. It's another key reason we are recognized as a global leader in sustainable, innovative mineral resource development. More specifically, this environment has led the development of a Canadian mining services and supply sector that is one of the most vibrant and dynamic globally. All levels of government in Canada recognize that these mining clusters are important contributors to our economy and need to be supported, as I mentioned before. And I highlight it here again, as it is an important key success factor because this support leverages existing resources and accelerates the development and commercialization of many of the innovative mining technologies we see today coming out of Canada, from advanced exploration tools and modern processing techniques to environmental technologies that make Canada a globally recognized leader in sustainable mining practices. Looking into the future, I am excited about how the Canadian mining ecosystem is evolving. We as an industry experienced one of the most prolonged bottoms in the mining business cycle in recent history, and it forced mining companies to rethink their respective business models to ensure a sustainable future, and Canadian mining companies are at the forefront of this change and have agreed to some ambitious goals. These companies are looking to the Canadian mining clusters to provide solutions that will allow them to attain 50% reductions in energy intensity, water use, and mining environmental footprint by 2027. With such audacious goals, all stakeholders in the Canadian mining ecosystem will have to further step up their support and collaboration. And I'm excited because one way the Canadian mining ecosystem is stepping up is by developing an enhanced collaborative model among the mining clusters to form a Canadian mining supercluster. This model will build on existing strengths and further connect each of the mining clusters across Canada. Such a supercluster will provide the coordination and acceleration of innovation and commercialization of solutions to attain these goals in a timeframe laid out. This is also where the digital platforms and clean technologies are finding a role to play in our industry today. I have 3 Canadian mining suppliers on the panel today that are great examples of what is coming out of these mining clusters from Canada. Thank you. What I'll ask is if each one of you could introduce yourselves and just give the audience here a little bit about who you are and what you do. Jody, if you would like to start.
Sure. My name is Jody Davies. I'm the marketing manager of Motion Metrics. Motion Metrics is a privately held company that was established in 1999, but out of Vancouver, Canada. We have 2 offices to date, one in Vancouver and one in Chile. We have consultants across South Africa and Botswana. Motion Metrics is one of the first companies to really bring artificial intelligence and machine learning into the mining environment. Our pioneering product was missing tooth detection for mining shovels. So this is a camera-based solution placed on the mining shovel that detects when a tooth is missing. When teeth like this don't get caught and they travel through downstream equipment, they can cause serious damage, ripping belts, or even more seriously, jamming crushers. And the safety implications and the financial implications of a jammed crusher are very large, as we all know. Since we saw the success of this missing tooth detection system, we developed a full shovel-based system. So this includes tooth wear monitoring to monitor when teeth are getting too short and need to be changed out, fragmentation analysis, which determines rock size distribution within the shovel bucket, as well as payload monitoring to make sure every shovel bucket is filled to their optimal capacity and every truck is also filled optimally as well. Since then, we've adapted these solutions. We have a missing tooth detection system for loaders, as well as a portable fragmentation analysis solution. Altogether, these solutions can be seen in over 60 mines worldwide and on over 300 pieces of equipment.
Thank you very much, Joy. Todd, could you introduce yourself and your company?
Absolutely. Todd Burns. I'm the president and owner of Cypher Environmental. I hope nobody expects me to have anything smart to say. I was actually just promised a free pisco sour. That's why I'm up here right now. In fact, if I had one, I'd probably speak a lot better Spanish, so I apologize for my English. Doug actually did a great job of sort of almost providing an intro to us, because a lot of the themes he hit on is what we focus on as a company. So we offer a number of environmentally friendly, cost-saving solutions. So our focus is mainly on roads. So while all our products are environmentally friendly, they're used for dust control and road stabilization. So when I talk about stabilization, I'm talking about enhancing the engineering performance of your roads. So your haul trucks become more fuel efficient, you have less maintenance costs, ultimately saving a lot of money, reducing rolling resistance. We also do dust control, so the dust control itself also saves a lot of money. A lot of dust reduces your productivity because vehicles are slowing down. Most people are using water, which is, you're wasting water. Actually, it's the fuel cost, which is the major expense in the sort of the old-fashioned approach to dust control. And so by using our technologies, you're saving a ton of water, a ton of fuel. They're applied with standard equipment, so you just spray it on the road. He also talked a bit about moving to dry stack tailings. We have solutions for dry stack tailings as well for dust and erosion control. Similar products that we have for roads, we actually spray onto the surface of the tailings pile to eliminate erosion and eliminate the dust. We have successful projects in over 20 countries around the world. We have some great distributors here in Peru. La Plata, some of the guys are in the audience there if they want to raise their hands. Instead of looking at their phones, there you go, guys. So we're really excited about the Peruvian market, and that's us in a nutshell.
Thank you, Todd. Tony? Alex, I see there might be some questions from the audience. If there's, I guess we should be putting on headsets.
Well, this one is actually in English.
Oh, okay.
Sí. Esta pregunta voy a preguntarle en inglés y no sé si para ustedes como proveedores, pero a veces sí es importante también en la cadena de valor. They're asking in general, what is the community situation of First Nations people at the mines in Canada? So it's a bit of a social question, but at the same time, perhaps an interesting one for you guys to take into consideration as you're developing your technology and your services. How is that impacting local communities, be it local or First Nations? And if there is any support in developing programs in the communities, perhaps that you work in conjunction with the mining operators.
I might take it from a bigger picture. I can tell you that in Canada, there is a recognition from our Indigenous communities that the future of their wealth creation is going to be tied to resource development, and that it is tied to specifically mining. They see that as the key opportunity, but they also recognize it has to be done in a sustainable and respectable manner with the environment. So we are seeing that shift happening in Canada, and it's actually quite exciting, and there's many opportunities that we will see in the future with the partnering in terms of opportunities for them with the mining suppliers. Because I can add, for every direct mining job that Doug had mentioned, there are 2.5 times employment in the mining supply sector to that operation. So there's many opportunities. They recognize them, and they also see themselves as a potential supplier of these services and products in the future. So I see it as a positive, but if there's somebody, okay.
I'll answer in English because perhaps the question was asked in English, but in our case as a supplier, we have found various cases today where we need to work closely with the mining company that holds the title to the area and comply with their native agreement that it would have negotiated with the companies, where it involves a supply chain as well, management, where we have to obey by certain rules that are set in motion by the agreement that the mining company has done with the suppliers. And that may incorporate local labor force, local distribution, the various aspects that may be integrated directly into the necessity of our supplying a product to that product, especially with the Nunavut and north of Canada as well. That it's a mandatory process to have native agreements.
Right.
Yeah. We do a lot of work in northern Canada. It's called Nunavut, and I know the mines you've worked with up there. Tony, you touched on this. They have agreements with the local communities, and they have to have a certain percentage of employment. I can't remember what that rate is. I think it's quite high. It's 50-60%, something along those lines. And they definitely have stricter environmental policies maybe than some other mines do. I think all mines in Canada do, but I mean, on First Nations land, they're very, very, closely tied to the environment, because that's where they get all their resources from. And so for us, it's a great opportunity, being that we offer all environmentally friendly solutions. So.
Perfect. Jody, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys touched on all similar in motion metrics. We make sure we're always doing sustainable technology wherever we are in the remote locations of Canada.
Right. Good. Thank you. Good question.
The other question I will ask in Spanish,
Well.
and it could be, again, general and then perhaps more directed to you guys, or if not, maybe at the end, if there's time, I'll ask the question also to Doug Morrison. La pregunta es, ¿cuál es la tendencia de la aplicación de la realidad virtual en la minería subterránea?
Oh, I thought you were going to translate that.
I can translate.
Okay.
Asking you, what is the tendency for virtual reality, the application of virtual reality in underground mining?
That is a technology that is coming down. It's going to integrated with many services. I can tell you the engineering firms and mine are what we call contract mining services, such as Redpath or cementation, are using virtual reality as a way of doing a preemptive or a walk through the design. Instead of looking at it on 2D, 2 dimensions, we are now able to immerse ourselves as a group with the customers, so you can walk through the development. And they have gone through, what's exciting about that is, as you have the maintenance crews, the operations and engineering of the customer with the contract mining services group, you can walk through the development plan. And what they find from that, by being able to actually, in a 3-dimensional group setting, multiple people seeing it in 3 dimensions, they can make changes to the construction and to the plan prior to having that reality happen, typically when you're building a mine and you're into the construction phase. So they're actually saving money and making the design and plans more safe as a result of it. So there is going to be more and more of what we call virtual reality and augmented reality. That's the other piece to that as well. So, yeah.
De nuestro lado, como igual parte del sector minero, pero como proveedor, hay bastante de cambios ahora en lo que sea entrenamiento a través de los sistemas de realidad virtual, que sea entrenamiento de operador, entrenamiento técnicos, igual que pues podemos empezar a dar unos troubleshooting así sentado en una oficina, sin irse de la mina. Además hay un tema de seguridad en los sitios como una mina de block cave o de barrenación larga, en lo cual hay un blocaje de mineral o algo así que no baja bien el mineral. Antes había gente que entraba ahí con unas maneras inadecuadas para ver cuál es el problema, mirándolo personalmente. Ahora se usa unos drones y que entra ahí, que puede ver las cosas, reenvía la información rápidamente hacia la superficie y de ahí analizar el problema de manera muy segura y más eficiente. Entonces, unos usos reales ahora que está pasando.
Would you like to Yeah, it's very close in here.
Yeah, so Motion Metrics operates in open pit operations, so I can't speak too much to the underground, but in the last couple of years, as I've traveled around the world attending all these trade shows, definitely the amount of virtual reality companies that are popping up at all of the trade shows has increased significantly.
Todd, do you have
It's a little bit outside of our field. Actually, we have a new virtual reality brochure that I'd love to show everyone, but beyond that, in terms of the mining technologies, we were not too involved in that just yet.
Right, excellent. No, nada? Okay. ¿Cuánto tiempo? 5 minutes? Okay, gracias. Here I am speaking Spanish. Yeah. Maybe I'll ask a question to Todd. Todd, as I mentioned in my opening remarks as well, in terms of reducing water, energy intensity, and the environmental footprint, how do your products address these three main objectives in the mining industry? I know you talked a little bit in your introduction, but maybe you could expand upon that.
Absolutely. Well, for example, right now we're doing a project with one of our strategic alliance partners, which is Red River College. Jody mentioned that their offices are located actually in UBC, right? We have a partner in Winnipeg where we do a lot of our research, and we're doing a rolling resistance study there right now. So for example, when our products are applied to roads, we make them more stable, we reduce the deflection, so we reduce the movement of the road when a haul truck is driving over top of it, and as a result, that haul truck therefore becomes more fuel efficient. So we're saving fuel, we're saving energy, and we're saving costs on maintaining the road. So, and of course the dust control ones, I already touched on that. Typically, at an average open pit mine, the practice is to just drive around constantly all day long watering your roads. So you're burning tons of water, burning tons of fuel, creating a lot of greenhouse gases. With our technology, you simply apply it to the road, and watering becomes a thing of the past. You may still use small amounts of water here and there, but ultimately through enhancing your road performance, you're reducing the water consumption because it's no longer necessary. And so that's really our focus is on cost savings, energy reduction, and water reduction, and we really focus on that on other roads, and it's similar for tailings piles as well.
Right. I think, as we wrap up here, if each one of you could kind of say, is there somewhere in Peru they can actually see your products or services in action? Jody, if you would like that.
Yeah, in Peru, we have our shovel-based solutions here in Arequipa at the Cerro Verde mine. We also have the same solutions further south in Peru at Tocopala. And our handheld fragmentation device is used by Orica Peru across all of their client sites throughout the country. And here in Peru, we're actually represented by our agent, Minera Almax.
Thank you. Todd?
Well, I think the guys from La Plata can probably comment on this better than I can, but I know we have several kilometers of roads. Actually, we work with people outside of the mining industry as well, so we have several kilometers of roads done in the municipal and government sector. We have a project coming up with Hud Bay at their Concepcion mine. I think we have several other upcoming projects in the hopper, which if you come talk to me afterwards, I can fill you in on.
Thank you. Tony?
Sí, bueno, acá en el Perú tenemos equipos trabajando desde 2004, más bien en la zona de Cerro del Pasco, con el grupo Milpo Votoranchima, ahora se llama un poco más la empresa. Además tenemos unos equipos trabajando con el grupo Buenaventura en Orcopampa y la mina, disculpa, siempre digo Chacua porque es más fácil, no puedo pronunciar el otro nombre. Y sí, estamos siguiendo así desarrollando con otras empresas igual para crecer nuestra flota en este país. Y tenemos una oficina en Lima con casi 40 personas trabajando en el apoyo de nuestras flotas. Sí.
Excellent. Well, I think we'll wrap up the session. Thank you very much for attending, and thank you for all our panelists.
Entonces, gracias. Creo que este panel logró ilustrar justamente el labor y dinamismo de la transformación minera. Finalmente llegamos a nuestra última sesión que nos preocupa a todos. Desafortunadamente este año el fenómeno del Niño costero afectó el país tremendamente. Por un lado hemos visto la devastación y la destrucción de aguas abundantes y por el otro lado nos dimos cuenta del valor de una escasez de agua, un recurso altamente sagrado y fuente de vida. Con respecto al agua y la minería, sigue siendo un origen de conflicto para el desarrollo minero en el Perú y fuente fundamental para grupos antimineros, aunque, según la Sociedad Nacional de Minería, Petróleo y Energía, la minería usa solamente el 1.04% del agua consumido en el país. No obstante, hoy en día la minería debe tener una mirada más integral, una proyección social que integre y el agua es clave. Por eso que la presentación del Dr. Bernd Klein, director de CIRDI, el Instituto Internacional de Canadá de Recursos y Desarrollo, y también jefe del Instituto Norman B. Keevil de Ingeniería Minera de la Universidad de Columbia Británica sobre agua, minería y desarrollo, es muy oportuna. Dr. Klein es un ingeniero y catedrático de la UBC. Su tesis de doctorado trató sobre la reología y la separación de medio denso. Luego, como diseñador, desarrolló varios procesamientos de minerales preciosos y minerales industriales y siempre viendo aspectos ambientales, tratamiento de agua y lixiviación de relaves y desmontes. Actualmente, aparte de ser catedrático, lidera iniciativas internacionales en la China, Turquía, Mongolia y Perú. Dr. Klein dirige el programa del Instituto Integrated Water and Resources Management en el Perú y que resultó en la creación de un diploma en agua y minería y una alianza estratégica y colaborativa entre la UBC y de la Pontificia Universidad Católica del Perú. Por favor, invito al Dr. Klein.
Well, hello, and thank you for all attending this session and my presentation. I want to say a special thank you to the Canadian Embassy for having me participate in this program. So today, I'm going to talk about water, mining, and sustainable development. It's a subject that is important all over the world, and I know it's acutely important here in Peru. And I have been working in Peru for about 12 years now on different projects, including a program I've been working on at the Antamina mine, where we've been looking at issues related to acid rock drainage. Okay, so first of all, the Canadian International Resources and Development Institute was created about 4.5 years ago, and it was created through the federal government of Canada, in which the concept of having expertise from Canada based at academic institutions would work on challenges related to the mineral resource industry. So we're a partnership of 3 universities, École Polytechnique de Montréal, Simon Fraser University, which is in Vancouver, and the University of British Columbia. And it was recognized that the challenges faced by the mining industry globally are really multidisciplinary. So when we propose activities, we recognize that we have to draw off of not only expertise in engineering and sciences, but also expertise in areas of social sciences, political sciences, governance, and the concept was to try to pull together those different types of expertise to focus on common issues. And so we have these 4 activity centers that focus on advisory, learning and education, applied research, and engagement and dialogue. So water is recognized as perhaps the most important issue facing the mining industry globally. And all the major and largest mining companies in the world recognize this. When you come to a country like Peru, where you have dry regions and wet regions, and a lot of the conflict reported as up to 70% of all the reported conflicts in the country relate to water and mining, you recognize the importance of this. And as was stressed in earlier presentations, if we don't find good ways to deal with these pressures, it's going to not only impact the mining industry, but it's going to impact the opportunity for the countries where the mining industries are being developed. So our institute, we bring some aspects to trying to address these issues. And the presentation today will focus on a program that we have been running in Peru for the last couple of years, but it also relates to Canada and other parts of the world. And in our program, we focused on 4 main activities. We looked at, in Peru, you have some very interesting ways to deal with your issues, particularly the participatory water monitoring committees that you have across the country. We wanted to have a focus on gender, water, and mining, as we wanted to recognize, and with respect to sustainable development, equity and gender issues are central and important. We developed a certificate, an education certificate program that was really aimed at helping to train people within the National Water Authority, ANA, to help them better understand integrated water resource management in region where there is mining. And finally, we did a case study by working with Cerro Verde to show what Cerro Verde did with the city of Arequipa in Peru as an example of best practices of how a company can have a positive impact on sustainable development with respect to water. So, firstly, we know that Peru has dry regions and wet regions, and it turns out that many of the dry regions, or the drier regions, is where a lot of the mining activity takes place. While overall mining only uses a small proportion of the consumed water in the country, in the areas where the mining takes place, it might represent a very significant portion of the water. So there is anxiety around water, access to water, secure water supply, as well as water quality, that has resulted in conflict in Peru. And that type of conflict is not unique to Peru, it happens in Canada as well. And then you put on top of that the risks associated with climate change. So people are unsure about the future and the future stability of those water resources. And I guess we've all seen extreme events within the last year, whether it was the rains that you had here about 6 months ago in Peru, the heavy rains in the mountains, or the hurricanes that we've seen that have hit the United States. So we know that something is happening with the climate. In order to support strong governance, we need to have a strong understanding of the water resources. And I think that in Peru, your National Water Authority is putting a lot of effort into trying to develop that knowledge, not only with respect to precipitation and rivers and lakes, but also groundwater, and trying to really understand the water resource so that they can better govern it. And some of the issues, as will be shown by the case study for Cerro Verde, can be addressed through infrastructure development. So With respect to water quality, I also find that there is perhaps a lack of understanding of what are the water quality issues associated with mining. And there are a few. Acid rock drainage is considered to be one of the biggest issues for the metal mining industry globally. Metal leaching from waste rock, water becoming acidic because the minerals, once they're exposed to air and water, will generate acid. And those acidic waters will flow into other river systems and transport metals with them. And so some of these situations are from mines, but others are actually natural. This is a natural occurrence. And but it's an issue. So for example, in the Ancash region, that's the Santa River, or Rio Santa, there's a small stream that flows into it called Rio Negro that's just upstream from Huaraz. And that stream has a pH of about 4 or 4.5. And it's brown in color, much like you see here. And it's not formed because of mining, it's formed because the glaciers are retreating. And as the glaciers are retreating, they're exposing sulfide minerals that are oxidizing and generating acid and leaching metals into the systems. But strong knowledge of these processes is important for the metal mining industry to be aware of. And these systems, these issues can be addressed through technology. Any big mining company will not allow this to flow into the environment. They will treat it and deal with it on their site if it's happening, or they'll try to mitigate it using systems like were described in the first presentation today. So this is a legacy mine site, Tikapampa. It's on the Rio Santa, and if any of you have driven past it, you might say, well, what is that we're driving past? So that's waste material from a mine, an old mine, that has this acid rock drainage issue happening. And every year, over the period of the year, the minerals in that rock are weathering, generating acid, and during the dry season they're accumulating, and when it rains, it flushes out the metals and the acid into the water, and that flows down the Rio Santo. Of course, there's a lot of concerns related to issues such as tailings dam failures, and the case that happened at São Marco in Brazil a couple of years ago now was well known. And not only did it transport sediments into the river systems, but it also carried metals with it. And it also caused physical destruction. Another important issue that I want to raise with respect to water quality is artisanal mining, which is a significant issue in Peru. And in particular, you have informal and formal small-scale mining. But sometimes formalizing the small-scale miners doesn't necessarily change their practices. When you take a close look at what's happening in Peru, you rank number 5 amongst small-scale miners that use mercury globally. Now, mercury use alone will contaminate a community and a region, but when you take that a step further, many of these small-scale miners are using mercury plus cyanide. So for a large-scale mine to try to use cyanide requires a lot of regulation, a lot of systems that have to be in place in order for them to use it in a safe manner. But when a small-scale miner uses cyanide, they don't follow any of those procedures. Most times the waste effluents are going into streams, the cyanide flows into streams, and the issue of using mercury plus cyanide is worse than using either one of them by itself, because the cyanide actually reacts with the mercury, and so now it's transporting the mercury long distances down streams. It's also converting the mercury into a more toxic form that can be more readily absorbed into the food chain. So that's a real serious issue, and it's a trend around the world that small-scale miners are using mercury to recover some of the gold and then cyanide to recover the rest of the gold. And I think it's a nightmare that we're going to see evolve and emerge in the next couple of decades. So when we talk about sustainable development, There are 3 pillars that many of you may have read about or heard about. One relates to prosperity, the other relates to social equity, and the third relates to environment. And when you look at each one of those areas, it's in the center where they overlap, and that's where we try to practice to achieve sustainable development. Importance to sustainable development are governance, developing good policies. Scale, are we talking at a local, regional, national, or international scale? Are we talking short-term and long-term? Education is also critically important to sustainable development. And again, we can talk about scale of education. Are we talking about the people who are responsible for governance and ensuring that standards are being met? We're talking about the engineers and the people who are operating the mines, but we also need education at the community level, where the people who are living in those communities where the mining takes place understands not only some of the challenges to what mining does to their communities, but also what the opportunities are in order to be able to convert what might appear to be a negative issue into positive opportunities. So there are some principles of social goals associated with mining. These are quotations. Facilitate the creation of mineral wealth, ensure development occurs in economically efficient manner, distribute the surplus from the mining activity fairly, and sustain benefits even after mine closure. So my colleague at UBC, Dirk van Ziel, he's adamant about this issue that some people talk about sustainable mining. He says, mining is not sustainable. So they're not equal. However, mining can support sustainable development. So that's how you should look at it. And so one way to look at this issue is to understand different forms of capital. There is the natural capital, such as the mineral resources. There is the human-made capital, that's infrastructure. And there is human capital, which is knowledge, skills, culture, and social capital, which is equity, trust, reciprocity. So the challenge is, can we convert that natural capital into the other forms of capital? And if we can, then that's one way of looking at how we do sustainable development from mining. So you've probably all seen this chart that lists all the sustainable development goals, and water quality is highlighted very clearly on this chart. But if you look at each one of the other areas here, you'll see that water actually plays a role in many of those sustainable development goals. So there's a relationship between health and clean water. There's a relationship between health and equity. So there's and water. So when we talk about water and sustainable development goals, it's not just one goal, it actually relates to many of the goals. So this is a slide that I showed you before. I'm going to show you some of the things that we've been working on over the last 2 years here in Peru. Our main partner has been the National Water Authority, who we work with, and in addition, we work with the academic institutions. So one of the things that we helped to support and develop was a national workshop for environmental water monitoring committees. I find that it's interesting to come from Canada and visit Peru and to see how you are dealing with your challenges. And you've done a lot of work and made a lot of advances in multi-stakeholder dialogues here. Every ministry of the government has a conflict office that tries to deal with conflict in some way. It was interesting that I heard about these participatory water monitoring committees and how they exist across the country where mining activities are being developed. So in some ways, I think that Peru is actually developing leading practices globally on trying to deal with water-related issues. You have a modern mining industry I think Peru has the largest number of ICMM membership of any country in the world trying to develop and operate mines in your country. So we helped to organize this workshop. There was lots of participation from government, from industry, and a lot of different government organizations. And that was really encouraging to get that type of support. The industry partners, they brought members of participatory water monitoring committees from across Peru to this workshop, which was held in Lima. And so we had over 200 participants. We could have had 300. We had 68 of those people were actual committee members from participatory water monitoring committees, from 22 communities, 7 regions, and we had 10 mining operations. And so it was I thought, a very positive meeting. And in my own personal perspective, the most positive component of this meeting was that for the first time, we had a meeting that had different representatives from the Peruvian government. We had mining company representatives, and we had NGOs and community representatives. And the discussion was extremely constructive. The communities were sometimes challenging the government, saying, we need this, we need your help here. But I think it was a very clear message that was being sent from the communities to the government and the mining companies. We also held a workshop on gender, water, and mining, where we worked with Católica University and the Canadian Embassy. This was also a very well-attended event, and it's focused on specific issues of water and gender in areas where mining takes place. And so raising the awareness of what are those issues. We have to first try to understand them and define them in order to try to address them. We worked with a lot of academic institutions. This lists some of the universities that we work with. We work with several of the universities in Lima, but we also specifically wanted to work with the universities in the regions where the mining takes place, because we feel that those universities should become specialized in resources, because many of the people that graduate from those universities will be working in the mining industry. So one program that we developed was in Lima with Católica University, which we developed a diploma in water and mining. This stems from a certificate in water and mining that we had at the University of British Columbia, and we embedded our certificate into an existing master's program. So the building parts are our certificate, which feeds into a diploma in water and mining, specialized in water and mining, and with an additional year, any students who took the certificate and the diploma could complete a master's degree at Católica. And so we combined materials that we taught with materials that were already being taught within the water resource management program at Católica University. Okay, so we also spoke to Cerro Verde because we had some connections for various reasons with that mining operation, and we heard of what they were doing together with the city of Arequipa and the national government that was contributing to development of infrastructure related to water in this community. And we thought, this is a story that needs to be told, because it represents leading practices, and people need to hear the story, not only across Peru, but internationally. So we had one of our very bright students, Jocelyn Fraser, come to Arequipa, visit with Cerro Verde, visit with local government, in order to try to understand the process that took place in order to get to where you are today with water infrastructure and sanitation. So this stemmed from Cerro Verde's interest to expand their mining operation from 120,000 tons per day to 360,000 tons per day. That's a huge mine, and it needs lots of water. And so the other issue was that the Rio Chili, it was quite polluted. There was sewage coming from the city of Arequipa that was flowing into that river. And so the concept arose that, well, can a sewage treatment plant be built that can take the sewage, treat the water, use some of the water for the mine, and return the clean water to the river? And so a sewage treatment plant was built. It involved collecting water from 3 main sewage collection sites across Arequipa, pumping the material to a primary treatment and a secondary treatment facility. And that facility treats 95% of the sewage that comes from Arequipa. And so this schematic shows the system that was built and where the treatment facilities are, and how the collection system, and this is the secondary treatment facility that treats the sewage in order to remove the bacteria to make the water relatively clean, suitable for using at the mine, as well as returning it most of it to the river. And so it got some recognition from your president, and I think that it demonstrated a very positive case for how a mining activity can be used to support sustainable development. And so you can see the river before, you can see it now. I understand that trout are being found in the river again. There are downstream consequences where the river water is used for agriculture as well. So there are many impacts of treating the sewage that rate from environment to health to other industries like agriculture. So it's a case study, and her work is being presented in Africa and other parts of the world as a good example of how you can support improved infrastructure by leveraging off of the resource sector. So just to sum up, our integrated resource management program from CERDI, we focused on a few activities that were aimed at working with Anna, sharing our experiences to hopefully raise the standard of understanding of, how does a mine affect a water resource, and how can it be managed? But when I look at specific aspects of sustainable development, and this is a statement of the effect of sustainable development goals. It is important to set goals, define them, recognize the challenge, show that they can be achieved, which will draw support for continued achievements with respect to the sustainable development goals. So we have these sustainable development goals, and the case study that you have here with Cerro Verde and Arequipa is a good example of saying, okay, this is what you can actually do. And when you set those examples, others can follow and duplicate them. And then finally, Jocelyn Fraser in her PhD posed the question, can mining contribute to sustainable development? So there are a lot of legacy issues of mining, but there's an opportunity for a new model of engagement of stakeholders with the Sustainable Development Goals at the center of conversation to look for collaborative solutions. So thank you very much.
Entonces, gracias, Dr. Klein. Justamente quería resaltar que el gobierno canadiense, conjuntamente con la Oficina de Gestión Social del Ministerio de Energía y Minas, estamos colaborando para ver un proceso de elaboración de una guía que debería salir próximamente fines de este año, sino inicios de 2018. Y la guía se llama Elementos de Gestión Social para una comunicación efectiva en fase de exploración minera. Y justamente estamos tratando de mejorar un poco el relacionamiento comunitario en el Perú y que puede ser una herramienta para las comunidades, tanto para las mineras también, pero para tener realmente justamente esta visión integral. Entonces, con esta presentación del Dr. Klein culmina nuestro Bloque Canadá. Espero que nuestra mirada integral durante las 2 últimas horas hayan sido para incitar una nueva perspectiva a medio y a largo plazo para la transformación exitosa del sector minero en cuanto al medio ambiente, a la seguridad y la productividad y a la eficiencia energética, tanto aquí en el Perú como en Canadá. Entonces, como estamos ya bien apretados y que los británicos están a la espera para seguirnos, les invito a acercarse durante el receso de café, a hablar con los expositores, los panelistas van a estar bien contentos de seguir conversando con ustedes y intercambiando ideas. Quiero reiterar nuestra gratitud al señor Morrison, al señor McEachern, a la señora Davies, a los señores Burns y Caron y al Dr. Klein, y sin olvidar, por supuesto, a nuestra embajadora Kutz y a todos ustedes para su participación. Muchísimas gracias.